Yet, the hour demands more than diplomatic scolding, more than kabuki theater. It is time to end the Islamic Republic. This is the demand echoing from the bloodshed of my compatriots, who are not asking us to fix the regime, but to help them bury it. As for the day after our victory, I have a clear plan for the transition to democracy. Millions of Iranians, inside and outside of Iran, are united around these four core principles: Iran's territorial integrity, individual liberties and equality of all citizens, separation of religion and state, and the Iranian people's right to decide a democratic form of government. My compatriots have called upon me to help unify opposition forces and guide a peaceful, stable, and orderly transition. Through the Iran Prosperity Project, my team of experts have developed a plan for the first 100 days after the regime's collapse and the long-term reconstruction and stabilization of our country. It is backed by business leaders and provides a detailed roadmap for national recovery, restoring economic confidence and ensuring essential services continued undisrupted. A constitutional process would follow under international observation, allowing Iranians to determine their own destiny at long last. A free and democratic...
Yes, hello, my name is Kamran Safiarian from ZDF German Television. Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, President Trump said yesterday that a military intervention or regime change would be the best for Iran. You also endorsed a military intervention. At the same time, he wants to negotiate with the regime. What are your comments on that? Thank you.
Well, obviously, we all agree the fact that the best solution is regime change. We've been saying this for decades. Now, the regime has always tried to buy time, and I don't see any fast outcome in terms of, or any outcome for the negotiations. The problem is time. Every day that goes by, more Iranians are dying in Iran. So an intervention and a rapid intervention will only help save more lives and at the same time help us overcome this regime.
درود بر شما شاهزاده رضا پهلوی. الان این کنفرانس خبری به صورت زنده از ایران اینترنشنال داره پخش میشه. من دو سوال دارم، یکیش رو به فارسی میپرسم و یکیش رو هم به انگلیسی میپرسم. سوال اولم در خصوص این هستش که خب شما پیشتر گفته بودید که نشانه‌های فروپاشی جمهوری اسلامی آشکار شده و امکان سقوط در هر لحظه وجود داره. در چنین شرایطی معرفی دولت در تبعید رو از چه زمانی شما ضروری میدونید و اگر ترکیب یا چارچوبی برای اون آماده شده، آیا میتونید به طور خاص درباره ساختار و معیارهای انتخاب اعضا برای مردم توضیح بدید؟ My question is, the second question is, now it can be said that a large part of the Iranian people are chanting your name. The slogan Pahlavi returns is clearly heard in the street of Iran, in universities, factories, and schools. Even at the funerals of those killed during the January revolutionary movement, your name is being chanted again. What's your message to them, to the people of Iran?
در بخش اول سوالتون، در به محضی که نظام سقوط بکنه قطعاً زمان اون دوران به اصطلاح اضطرار پیش میاد و دولت انتقالی که طبعاً یه ترکیبی خواهد بود از افرادی که در خارج از مملکت فعال بودند با کسانی که در درون مملکت هستند که توأماً بتونن تشکیل این هسته ها رو، و فقط مسئله دولت نیست، بخش مقننه شو داره، بخش حقوقی شو داره و یه ترکیبی خواهد بود از این افراد. برای حفظ امنیت و هویت افرادی که در درون هستند در شرایط کنونی به وضوح نمیتوان این افراد رو از قبل علنی کرد، حافظ جانشون باشیم، ولی به محض که شرایط عوض بشه خود به خود این معرفی خواهد شد و همیهنان آگاه خواهند بود که چه کسانی دارن این مسئولیت رو به عهده میگیرن برای پیش بردن اون دوران گذار. I'm going to switch now to the second part of the question. Well, indeed, millions of Iranians chanted my name and called for my return. That humbles me and gives me a lot of responsibility at the same time to answer their call and to be the leader of this transition as they have asked for. As I mentioned in my speech, anybody who agrees with those 4 core principles, irrespective of their political affiliation or viewpoints, can be part of this national struggle for freedom. The ultimate goal is for the transitional government to set the stage for the Constitutional Assembly, where the entire future of Iran can be decided by means of Iranians electing their representatives to debate the issue, to choose the final form they want the system to have, for a constitution to be drafted, for that constitution to be presented to the nation as a project, and people can, by referendum, either ratify it or send it back to that assembly. At the end of this process, once the constitution is approved and the nation votes in a referendum to adopt it, we will have the election of the first new parliament and the first new government of that future democracy. At that point, the temporary government will turn over control and power to the elected officials that the Iranian people would have selected for leading the country in the future.
Niloufar Gholami from Deutsche Welle Farsi. I want to ask one question in Farsi and one in English. شاهزاده رضا پهلوی، یکی از استدلال‌های مخالفان حمله نظامی اینه که خب فرمان جنگ فقط در دست قدرتیه که جنگ رو آغاز میکنه و رهبری میکنه، نه در دست کسی که خواستار حمله است. شما صریحاً خواستار حمله آمریکا با هدف سرنگونی حکومت شدین. حالا اگه این مذاکره به بنبست برسه و حمله نظامی صورت بگیره، اما از اونجا که فرمان حمله در دست شما فرمان در دست شما نیست، یا ممکنه فقط مثلا منجر به کشته شدن خامنه‌ای، از بین رفتن تأسیسات اتمی و موشکی، نابودی زیرساخت‌های کشور و مثل هر جنگ دیگه‌ای کشته شدن یه تعدادی غیر نظامی بشه، و اما به جای اینکه حکومت سرنگون بشه فقط سرکوب شدیدتر بشه. پاسخ شما اون وقت چه خواهد بود؟ یعنی حاضرید مردم چنین هزینه‌ای رو بپردازن فقط برای این احتمال که جمهوری اسلامی سرنگون بشه، یعنی فقط برای احتمال و نه یه قطعیت؟ و سوال دومم این هستش که some political groups.
اول قسمت سوال اولتون خیلی میشه مطلب. اولا روایت شماست، این فرضی که میکنید انقدر ابعاد مختلفی رو مطرح کردید که الزاما این نیست که شما توجیه کردید، ولی اساساً به اینجا برسم. مردم بی‌دفاع و غیر مسلح رفتن به خیابون، اعتراض کردن برای خواست آزادیشون. جوابشون چی بود؟ کشتار در حد 40,000 نفر در عرض 2 روز، در تاریکی و در عدم ارتباط با دنیای آزاد. حکومتی که بر علیه مردم خودش جنگ می‌طلبه، فکر می‌کنید از طریق مسالمت‌آمیز قدرت را ترک خواهد کرد؟ قطعاً مردم بی‌دفاع احتیاج به یک کمکی دارن برای اینکه لااقل یک فرصت واقعی داشته باشن برای اینکه به اهداف آزادیشون برسن. حکومتی که به این شکل و در این حد جنایت کرده و عوامل سرکوبش مانع اصلی موفقیت این انقلاب مردم هست، قطعاً با یک کمک خارجی میتونن این کمک رو به دست بیارن. مردم به همین دلیل در انتظار این هستند که چنین اقدامی انجام بشه که نیروهای سرکوب نظام خنثی بشن و لااقل یک فرصت واقعی داشته باشن برای مقابله با این رژیم. کار به اینجا رسیده و دلیلی هم که تا اینجا رسیده به خاطر اینکه دوام این حکومت بیشتر به خاطر همین بحثایی بود که باز با این نظام مماشات کرد و واقعا مسئولیت اصلی این مماشات برمیگرده به خیلی دولت‌هایی که الان 14 هست دنبال این راه حل بودن، یا اون اصلاح طلبانی که به قول خودشون گفتن که ما می‌خوایم نظام رو نرم عوض بکنیم، ولی بیشترین کشته‌ها رو در ایران تحت لوای همین افراد به اصطلاح اصلاح طلب مدافع نظام بود. مردم امروز به این نتیجه رسیدن که باید از این نظام گذر کرد، ولی وقتی که به این شکل باهاشون حمله میشه حق دارن انتظار یک کمک خارجی داشته باشند. بنابراین این کمک خارجی به مفهوم از بین بردن نیروهای سرکوب لازمه. اینکه تأسیسات مملکت و زیرساخت‌ها از بین، اصلا هدف این نبود. تنها بخشی هم که یه مسئله مهم بود از دید دو کشور علل خصوص اسرائیل و امریکا و اونم مسئله تسلیحات اتمی بود، اون داستان دیگری است. برای ما آزادی است که مطرح است و این کمکی است که از جهانیان می‌خواهیم که این بار بیان و طرف درست تاریخ قرار بگیرن و حامی مردم ایران باشن، نه اینکه به دنبال مماشات باشن یا به قول فرنگی‌ها اپیزمنت که جواب نداد. مثالش هم زدم تو سخنرانیم. هیتلر رو سعی کردن به اصطلاح اپیز بکنن، نتیجهش چی شد؟ جنگ جهانی دوم. حالا بخش دوم سوالتون رو. No, she had two questions. I asked her to ask one at a time so I can answer the second question. Okay, pass.
Yeah. So some political groups have stated that in certain sections they do not agree with the emergency Facebook that your team has prepared. Are you prepared to discuss with them and hear their concerns and potentially make amendments?
Look, this is an open debate. There has been time allowed for people to critique what's been proposed. In fact, a lot of input came from inside Iran, from various specialists addressing various parts of this project. So there has been a lot of inclusion of those statements. It's not going to be a closed book. It can always be improved, of course. What we are trying to do here is to come up with the best possible solutions to the problems we think the country needs to be addressed from any areas of energy, healthcare, economy, whatever it is. But in the first 100 days, most importantly, during the transition, is to stabilize the country, stabilize the economy, make sure that that issue is taken care of, and most importantly, of course, security. And as you know, part of the reason my strategy has always been to call for maximum defections is to make sure that unlike what happened in Iraq after Saddam Hussein, we don't have a failed state and we don't have chaos. And a lot of the elements that can be part of the solution are the kind of people who have the guns in their hands that can now join with the people as opposed to be used by the regime against its own population. In that sense, we can have a better success in a smoother transition and including those people to be part of the solution. Except for the people who are criminally responsible and have the blood of people on their hand, who will have to account in a court of law and be answerable for their crimes.
Thank you, Your Royal Highness. Sam Dagger with Bloomberg News. I'm the senior Middle East reporter based in Dubai. So I have a couple of questions. I'll keep them brief. First of all, what's your view on the current crackdown on reformists? And I know you see them as members of the current regime, but do you also see them as possible allies, these reformists? And my second question is, where does your movement obtain its funding from at the moment? Thank you.
Again, those four core principles defines who can be on this ride and who disqualify himself or herself from it. I repeat, Iran's territorial integrity, separation of church from state, equality of all citizens under the law and individual liberties, and the democratic process, which is that parliamentary process. If yesterday reformers today decides that it's no use, we better join with the people and have the same demands, they're welcome to join us. It's as simple as that. As long as, again, they are not criminally implicated in the murder of their own citizens. Because that's a different story, and they will have to account for it.
And on the question of funding,
all the funding that we receive is private donation and private sector helping and Iranian people contributing. I have yet to receive a penny of government support or any government for that matter.
You've mentioned the protests here today in Munich. What can you tell us about the protests that are ongoing in Iran right now? How big are they? And is this still something you can ask us, or is this dangerous to go on the streets?
Well, as you saw the bravery and courage of my compatriots when they came to the streets and they were only met with this brutal genocidal level, industrial level massacre. And of course, people have to retreat under the circumstances, but they still continue chanting. The last few nights, whoever has followed social media in Iran and whatever information trickled out, people are still out there chanting. People are still out there resisting. The regime, unfortunately, continues its campaign of imprisonment. There are many people incarcerated in Iran, God knows where. Over 40,000 of them, we understand. They continue to threaten and harm, and even in some cases execute hospital workers and nurses. They've done things as we speak that continues, but despite all of that, people are resisting. Now, again, the importance of a strike to neutralize the regime forces of repression is the element that could get people back into the streets to continue their struggle. That's the element that pretty much is at stake right now, which is why Iranians in Iran and abroad are awaiting impatiently that this happens faster and sooner rather than delaying it. Because as I said, I don't think these negotiations will amount to anything. The regime is simply buying time yet again. But every day that goes by, more people could die. That's how important an intervention is to equalize the playing field for us.
Luc André for the French newspaper L'Opinion. You evoke the option of a constitutional monarchy as an option. How can it be a realistic option if you don't acknowledge what went wrong with the previous monarchy? Thank you.
Aren't we talking about the future?
Yes.
So why are you talking about the past?
Maybe it's make a difference for people that
Look,
maybe consider
we're
these
talking
options.
about the future. And the Iranian people are smart enough to understand that in any democratic exercise, elimination of options is not the way to go. Democracy is not about exclusion, it's about inclusion, unless you are not in conformity with democratic principles. So as long as you are coherent with democratic principles, there are multiple options on the table. Why should we eliminate one option all of a sudden? Because if you want to go by precedence, there may be many bad monarchies as there are many bad republics. And there are also good models of republics and good models of constitutional monarchies, are they not? So if you want to compare apples to apples, great, and oranges to oranges, great. But we're not here to compare apples to oranges.
Yes, thank you very much. Councillor Naji from the BBC's Persian television. I just wondered, you said your compatriots have called on you to lead this transition period. But that's obviously not the case. There are a lot of people who don't support you within Iran and outside Iran. My question is, why have you not been able to unify these people? Why is it that you're not the voice of all of the Iranian people? Why is it that Western countries are not supporting you or endorsing you as the voice of the Iranian opposition? Thank you very much.
Well, this is a very typical question I expect from the network that you represent. Look, you say it's not true. You tell me, have you heard any other names called in Iran other than mine?
There have been other people who
But
have
you had your chance.
name.
You asked the question.
Yeah.
I'm answering now.
Sure, please do.
The fact is, they called my name. Is my name written on the walls there? It is me that they chose to trust to lead this movement. I'm not saying that I have 100% of people on my side. Of course I have my enemies. And there are obviously elements that do not adhere to those four core principles. You might have separatists, you might have pro-regime reformists, you might have groups like the MEK. Certainly they are not my friends. And I do not represent them. Of course I don't represent them because they are not adhering to the principles that I described. But all those who are prescribed to the fourth principle, we are together. And among them you will find a quite diverse number of people. We have Republicans as we have monarchists. We have people on the left, on the center, on the right. We have athletes, we have artists, we have representatives of ethnic communities, religious minorities. Many of them were, in fact, in this very city in Munich when we had the last gathering a few months ago. And you will see a lot of them present. In fact, today, in the demonstrations that are set for Munich, that will be speaking to the crowd, and there'll be, in fact, quite a diverse array of people. If you want proof, go and check it out, and you'll see that, unlike your premise, in fact, it is quite diversified, and a lot of people are supporting, and they're supporting my leadership. Many of them understand that I'm a bridge to that destination. They support me today, even though tomorrow they may vote for their preferred system of government. And I'm not here to advocate for monarchy or a republic. As a matter of fact, I told them, as an honest broker, I'm remaining above the fray. My position is neutral towards the outcome. Let the Iranian people, by the ballot box, determine their majority wish for the ultimate system they want to have. And if we all respect the democratic process, we should also respect the ballot box and the result of that free election. That's all I'm asking for. Not just the Iranian people, but for the international community, particularly democratic society, to value. Because this is something that they have in their own countries. That's exactly what we want to have in our own country as well.
And the Western countries?
That's what I said. Free democracies, first and foremost.
Why are they endorsing you?
Because I'm not asking for an endorsement. I'm not asking for personal endorsement. I'm asking them to support the Iranian people and back them on their right to determine their own future, as opposed to say, we are still going to side with the regime and try to appease it, which has never given the people an actual chance for true and meaningful elections. Because there's no such thing in Iran as free elections or the ballot box. It's a mockery of democracy. It's shameful to pretend that there's actual elections in Iran. They will laugh at you if you were to suggest that to any Iranians inside Iran. Some people in the outside world may be fooled, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. At some point, it's going to blow in their face. Encourage you to study, to take a look at it. It is quite a comprehensive outline of every aspect of things that need to be addressed and anticipated. So indeed, we are able to manage as much as we can all the areas that, if not addressed properly, could, in fact, bring us to a situation of having that vacuum as we talk about. But there's not going to be any vacuum for the simple reason that, again, the majority of the people currently in a position in government offices or various state bureaucracies will remain in place. We're not asking people to go home and quit their jobs. So we have to be able to manage this transition, understanding that the majority of these elements will be in place as far as the civil bureaucracies goes. So the functioning of the state and government continues, while the interim government, based on that proposal that we have, will address all of these issues. In fact, even before we have a normal state of a democratic system, we have various components that are part of it. The executive part of it, which is the transition government, is doing what a sort of transitional government would do. But you also have a legislative body, which is some kind of a council or an assembly, where people will be there and supervising what's happening. We even have a completely independent legal team that will be addressing all the legal issues. So we already are incorporating, even in the transition phase, some kind of a checks and balance, precisely to make sure that we're not leaving any stone uncovered. And speaking of the legal part, it's very important because I think, especially after this genocide, there's a lot of fact-finding that needs to be done. But we have had various models that we are implementing in the case of the Iran scenario in terms of transitional justice, in terms of truth and reconciliation, what to do with the remnants of the regime, those who are criminally responsible. All of these issues are at play. The point is to make sure that we have a day of reckoning as far as people asking for justice. We are also talking about how to make sure that the mechanism of transition ensures a stable transition, and that's where we incorporate all the defectors that join us, including those that come from the military and paramilitary branches. I think all of these are the elements that will avoid the possibility of a vacuum. It is precisely lesson learned from other failed regime change scenarios that we've seen recently, whether in Iraq or in Libya, for instance. And the case of Iran is very different from those countries, number one. And we also have quite a number of institutions within Iran, beyond the political organization, civil society, and many others that will be part of this entire mechanism. So I urge you to take a look at that plan, and I'm sure you will find a lot of answers to your question there.
Thanks. Saza Bashidze, Realpolitika, Georgia, from Georgia, based in Brussels nowadays. So my question is, you address to the Western countries for their support and for their action, but what do you think about the neighboring countries of Iran? Do they really support the regime change, or do they prefer their own calculations, and maybe for that reason they are for status quo and not for the changes? And also, do you have any communication with the leaders of maybe Qatar, Turkey, and some other regional countries? Thanks.
I think all of our regional neighbors understand the consequences since the advent of this regime and the kind of negative impact it has had on them. One of the biggest issues that has been the root cause of regional instability is basically the radical Islamic forces, some of them on the Sunni side from the Muslim Brotherhood, some of them from the Iranian regime, from the Shiite side of it, and the way it has impacting our region, and beyond that, Europe and the rest of the world. And this is the root cause of the problem in the region, not to mention issues of belligerence or existential threat, let's say, to the Israelis or the Houthis that are disrupting issues and are targeting other countries in the region. It's all somehow tied to this regime. Once we have a different kind of system in Iran, one that is committed to peace, to work with their neighbors on a friendly basis, it is definitely something that they will welcome. The certainty of whether it will happen or not may determine how aggressive they are in actually declaring it. They may not say it openly because they are not quite sure if it's going to really get there. But the minute it's out there, I'm sure that you will hear them much more pronounced, in a much more pronounced way, say so. And the level of information that I gather in conversation that I have indicates that everybody is waiting for that to happen because they know at the end of the day, this regime cannot be trusted. This regime has only one purpose, is to export its ideology. It is a threat to its own people. If it's not going to even, not harm its own citizenry, how could they possibly not feel threatened by the continued existence of this regime? So I think at the end of the day, everybody understands, in the region I mean, and I think the rest of the world is beginning to find out more and more, that the only way to eliminate all the problems at once is for this regime to be no longer there, and instead have a country where its people who yearn to be back in the free world, who yearn to be reconnected to the free world, will prove that unlike this regime, they are peacemakers and they believe in stability first and foremost, which is the obvious immediate interest of our regional neighbors.
Okay. This gentleman with the glasses here, and then Epoch Times. You've been waiting a long time.
Hi, my name is John Mooney. I'm a journalist with the Sunday Times. Just two questions I'd like to ask you. How important is the Iranian shadow fleet to propping up the regime in terms of raising finance for it? And secondly, a number of these actors who run these ships, we're involved in an investigation into this, are criminal elements that are sheltering in places like Dubai. I'm talking about the Kinnan cartel and groups like it. What is your message to, number one, can you outline the importance of the shadow fleet in terms of finance generation? And secondly, countries that are protecting some of these criminal actors involved in this, like the United Arab Emirates, what should they do? Should they remove these people from their jurisdictions?
Well, again, that's part of the entire problem. The establishment of an era where you let certain things normalize in terms of criminal behavior, or most importantly, the reason this regime continues to exist because partly it can still afford to pay the salaries of the mercenaries or its brutal force. One way to weaken the regime even further is to impose more restrictions so that their source of revenue is cut off, so they can no longer sustain their own elements. The regime is quite weak. It's on the verge of collapse. They will try anything to circumvent sanctions or what have you. There's nothing new to it. Everybody knows about that. Now, if there are certain countries in cahoots with them, they'll have to address that in terms of how they justify it legally or not. But that's a challenge for many governments in the world that are monitoring that to impose. We have our fight to fight as Iranians to liberate themselves. We don't have time to worry about which country is doing what legally or not. But that's, I think, the world community that has to look into those things. So ultimately, the bottom line is that any source of revenue to the regime will contribute to its ability to sustain itself a little bit longer, but at the end it will fall. So the more we expedite its downfall, the quicker we'll be out of this mess and not to have worry about all the fringe consequences of its continued existence and its impact in a negative way regionally.
Thanks. Eric Rusch, Epoch Times, Your Excellency. Why do you think a strong Iran who is an ally to European countries is overall beneficial for Middle Eastern and Europeans?
Well, look at it this way. We have now a possibility of even more migration to Europe as a result of any continuation of the status quo. Europe is already saturated and has a big problem when it comes to immigration. But more important than that even is the energy dependence that you have. A free Iran that will be able to supply Europe with its energy needs will certainly be an alternative to the only source that you have right now. And when you think of it, we are thinking of Russia, of course, and the way that plays into the equation, and Europe, not only security, but also economic interests. Not to mention all the economic opportunities that we've been deprived of, or there are sanctions currently that makes it impossible to do business with Iran. So it's lose-lose for Europeans and Iranians. But a free Iran and a strong Iran will not only alleviate that problem, but it will also permit to have a much more stable strategic partnership with a country that can provide you in many forms and ways with these abilities. And not to mention the fact that the Iranian diaspora, many of whom are waiting to be able to go back home and help. Many of them are today citizens of various European countries. They are our best ambassadors to your countries, and they can create so much more connection and access to Iran that would have been possible 50 years ago. All of these are the plus elements of a change in Iran, and I think it's a win-win for both us as a country and also Europe, and what it has to gain as a result of a change of politics in Iran.
Tobias Maternov, the German newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung. How do you see your role after the regime would collapse? You always mention that you see yourself as a transitional figure. If this transition would run smoothly, how do you see your role? And just second question, a fact check. I understood you correctly that you will be talking this afternoon at the demonstration?
We haven't decided that yet. But to your question, look, from the day I started this struggle, my sole aim was to see the day where the Iranian people will finally be able to elect their future democratic government. The day that happens, I consider that the end of my political mission in life. I've told my compatriots, I'm not running for office, I'm not running for a job, I'm not seeking power or a title. I don't want to put a crown on my head or be the next president. That has been my only focus. And I think part of the reason the Iranian people trust me in this leadership is because they know that I don't have any personal gain out of it. I'm not power hungry or ambitious to have anything for myself. I don't want anything in exchange. But I've spent my entire life dedicating my entire life to the liberty of the Iranian people only because I think that as a nation with a proud history and culture and civilization, we deserve better than the crap that is ruling us right now. That's why I'm in it, and I will deliver on my promise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.